Hey, and welcome back to the Healthy Highlife podcast. Some of you may know, but for those who don't, my name is Malcolm, a strength and mobility specialist, passionate about health, wellness, and fitness, but also cannabis. And for those who are new here, the goal with this podcast is to bridge the gap between those who may be struggling with the negative stereotypes and habits that surround cannabis, and for those who have figured out how to continue to get their shit done, stay productive, and continue living a high life. If you've got any struggles or you've got any tips or advice or anything, leave it in the comments below. And let's help each other out so that we can all become productive and driven stoners rather than being looked down on. If you caught the last episode, we dove briefly into the mindset that surrounds cannabis and how we can shift that in order to create positive change. But before we get into tonight's topics, I'd love to hear what you guys are smoking on tonight. I've gone for lemon berry cherries from Ted Buds, and I'm pairing that with this drizzle CBD flower. There it is. Yep. Both pretty nice. So should hold me down for this evening. Let me know what you guys have got going on down below. So whilst I get this rolled up, let's talk stress. Stress and pressure. Is it a bad thing? No, not necessarily. I mean, diamonds are created under pressure. Most people tend to love diamonds and don't necessarily see them as a bad thing. And ultimately, stress tends to cause action. You know, when our back's up against the wall, we tend to do our best work, honestly. If we feel like we have no options, we've got zero choices left, and the only option is to get through it, in which case we will do it. And that's usually when most of us do our best. But it usually takes us reaching that breaking point in order to crack and then see the way out. But ultimately, stress isn't always a bad thing, and actually it elicits change if it's recognized at the right time. See, most of us see stress as a real bad thing, a negative thing. Oh, I'm so stressed. Oh, this or that. But without it, we won't have anything to give us a kick up the arse and to give us a little bit of a sign and a signal to say, yo, like you need to start getting your shit together. And quite often the anxiety that comes through these stressful periods, and what seems to be a lot most of the time for most people these days, is that we're constantly anxious, constantly stressed. And the reality is a lot of those emotions, a lot of those feelings come from the fact that we're not doing the shit that we think or that we know we should be doing. The fact that we're not doing it is adding and growing that level of stress to a point where it feels like it's overwhelming and that your whole life is being crushed. When ultimately it started with something really small, like maybe responding to an email or something. But because you stuck your head in the sand and you avoided it for so long, it then grew into this massive issue, which then became overwhelming and bled over to other aspects of your life, in which case you then felt stressed overall. But like I said, a lot of these moments when we feel stressed or anxious are usually down to the fact that we've just not got the shit done that we had to get done. And that's usually down to the fact that a lot of us haven't actually got a plan for our day. We know we've got a busy day, but what's busy? Is busy really you doing a shit ton of stuff and being genuinely busy? Or is busy really just a erratic, unorganized day which has no structure, in which case you're just kind of randomly doing things here, there, and everywhere, or not doing them. And ultimately you feel like you're busy, but you're really just running around like a headless chicken doing not a lot. The moment of change really comes when you start to recognize that in yourself and be honest and take accountability over, are you actually doing things productively, or are you just procrastinating and avoiding things? And then the next question off the back of that is, are you procrastinating and avoiding things as a result of feeling stressed or anxious towards the tasks that you're avoiding? And if so, because that then generally leads to us thinking, okay, well, you know what? I just need a bit of a rest now because that's going to make me feel better and then I can deal with the stress. But what we don't seem to realize in that moment is that if we take another rest from technically resting and avoiding, we're just furthering ourselves away from the completed task or whatever the thing is that's triggering that anxiety or that stress. And the further you get from following through on the shit that needs to be done, the bigger the feeling of stress becomes. And ultimately, if you don't catch these moments, they compound and they accumulate over time. And eventually you become extremely stressed and extremely anxious, and you have no idea how to bring it back down to some kind of manageable level. But having the ability to manage your stress and your ability to withstand higher levels and environments of stress doesn't come for free. It's just like any skill, just like discipline or anything else. You have to work on it continuously, daily, over and over and over again. There technically is no finish line because, again, just like any skill, it's perishable. If you don't train your ability to withstand stress, you're not going to be able to withstand stress. You have not got that adaptation, in which case, when things do come along and you're expecting it to be easy, and it's not, and it whacks you around the head because that's what life tends to do, then you lose your shit in a moment of stress and everything else falls to shit around it. But if you train yourself and your ability to manage and handle stress, when life does throw curveballs at you, you're in a much better position to handle it. And I'm talking stress from all over. It could be like you lose your job, like some big life stress like that, all the way down to something like getting a cold or a flu or an illness, because that's also a stress upon the body. But if your body is trained in a way to fight stress and manage it, then you're going to be in a much better position to pivot around it. So how could you manage stress? How could you train yourself to withstand greater environments of stress? There are some external things. For example, something that's very popular these days is the ice bath, the cold therapy. Consciously putting yourself into difficult situations like an ice bath and sitting there in the discomfort for a good 2 to 3 minutes. And you do that over and over again. That will start to build your discipline. That will start to build your resilience. That will also start to build both mentally and physically your ability to handle stress. Another way in which you could develop your ability to withstand more stress, taking ownership and becoming present within your workouts so that you can get deep into the sets where you have to work through the tough bits. There's no other way through that set other than being present, focusing on the details, and managing a calm and collected state that allows you to get to the end of it. And just like the ice baths, if you choose to put yourself into this manufactured adversity, let's say, by putting yourself under heavy weights, under constant stress, under strain, having to push yourself through the hard stuff, that's your ability to withstand stress. You are becoming better at holding yourself up against stress and dealing with it as a result. Like I opened up with, stress then necessarily is not a bad thing, not all the time. Yes, some of the catalysts behind stress can be shit. Losing your job, loved one has a medical issue or passes away, whatever. There could be many triggers to very uncontrollable, stressful factors. But to that point, it's worth noting that we can only control what we can control internally, and we can only control how we react to the external. So if we're allowing the external to really penetrate our inner being, and we're allowing that to determine how we're going to view our life, our perspective on the world, and our frame on life, then that's going to determine the actions and the energy in which we take. So that could manifest either positive or negative. And that's a choice. Whether or not you're conscious of it, that is a choice that you make as to which type of energy you decide to run in. That, paired with your ability to manage stress and withstand higher stress situations, brings you into a much stronger position to become aware of these occasions when things are trying to get the better of you. And this brings me into the connection with cannabis, because there'll be many times in life, many seasons of life, where you might have an extremely stressful window. Everything seems to be coming down on top of you. Life is just shitting all over you. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? Usually times like that we then turn to use things like this as like an escape or a numbing tool, just to kind of escape the shit show that's happening in reality. But if we think we can just put our head in the sand or take a rest and avoid the stuff that needs doing, we're ultimately just amplifying the stress and the emotion that backs that up, because we're getting further and further away from completing the thing. The same thing goes here. If we're now using cannabis as a tool to escape and numb ourselves away from the thing, it's now becoming a negative part of life, because it's now becoming something that's taking away from what we should be addressing. And the only way out the woods is through them. Back to my first episode, this is where setting the intention behind how you use this really count. Because if you are sat there during the day and you're going through one of these shit storms in your head and life is crazy right now and you are mega stressed for whatever reasons, and you decide to reach for the joint to numb it out for a while, there tends to be a pattern that comes with this, because inevitably that's going to wear off and life is still going to be there shitting all over you. And it's only going to be you that can do something in order to change whatever is happening to you. Now, if you train your ability to manage and handle stress when you get into seasons of life, and there will be those seasons of life because that's just life, and you recognize that you're in a season of high stress right now because you're spinning thousands of plates or whatever is going on, if you're in a better position to handle it, you will make better decisions in that moment during that shitstorm, which will then navigate you through and out the other side of it, rather than trying to pull back and you end up just kind of getting stuck at the start of the storm the entire time. But the longer you spend at the start of the storm, the bigger the actual storm is getting, because life doesn't stop. And so the more you're hyper focusing on some random little thing that started small but then became massive, the rest of your life responsibilities are being piled in on top of that, in which case you are now creating a bigger storm because you're trying to avoid dealing with the thing. So then how can we use this to get to a point where we're better at dealing with this shit? Well, back to my point about setting the intention. Create yourself a place at home, or set yourself some time in your diary where you can sit down, choose the right strain, and spend maybe 10, 15, 30 minutes, whatever you need, writing out a rough plan, or go through the diary on your phone, whatever. Just use something to have a look through the week that's coming up. Start to have a look at those and create a bit of structure. Because if you have a bit of foresight on what's happening in your week to come, you're not going to be side slapped by loads of random events here, there, and everywhere, which are then going to throw you off some kind of structure, which means that you're going to be more stressed because life is going to be all up in the air rather than having some kind of form to it. Choose the right strain, set some time aside, and make yourself aware of what's coming up in your life. Have an idea. Then put some time aside in your evenings. Doesn't have to be long, could be 3-5 minutes or so. Just looking through your following day and identifying what your big tasks are for that day. Now, here's the important bit, because this gets back to how you're going to get shit done and ultimately reduce the anxiety and stress that grows as you avoid doing the things that need doing. Make yourself aware of what's happening. Have you got any big meetings that day? Have you got any interviews? Have you got to be somewhere? Whatever's happening. Have you got to do the meal prep? Have you got to clean the house? Whatever it might be, make yourself aware of that. The point is, you're going to have the subconscious now thinking about that while you're sleeping, rather than waking up and then being thrown in at the deep end at the start of your next day, going, all right, what the fuck? What is life? I don't even know. I've barely even opened my eyes, and all of a sudden I've got to deal with something. Boom. There's your first failure with being able to manage stress, because you weren't even ready for it. You just kind of got thrown into it, and then you were turned into a victim of it. And as a result, you then play out as a victim of your day rather than taking control of your day. Just by making yourself aware of what's happening the next day, you're already putting yourself ahead of the game. And now the second layer to that, in order to make that next day a success, is to pick the right strains. First of all, if you do utilize the plant throughout the day, make sure you're picking the correct strains that are not going to send you to the fridge or to the couch when you should be up and about. That's number one. But then number two, you don't want to overwhelm yourself in these situations, and then you'll end up getting yet another day of fuck all done. So we've all got a long ass to-do list of 20, 30, hundreds of stuff, right? But if we look at a list of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 things, we're going to look at that and be like, holy shit, I don't know if I could do that. You know what? I'm just going to do nothing again. And maybe it will just magically sort itself out. That's usually what we try to do. And as most of us can probably agree, that doesn't really work. But what we can do is break that down into bite-sized chunks that doesn't overwhelm us, so that we can actually get that shit done. So now imagine you've got 20 things to do. You break them down into, let's say, 4 or 5 things to do each day. To be fair, if you're going to bed looking at a list of 5 things to do the next day, you're more likely to be inclined to want to do those 5 things and actually get those 5 things done, rather than going to bed looking at a list of 20 things going, holy fucking shit, tomorrow looks insane. That's going to put you in a very different headspace to be able to manage the stress and the environment, to be able to deal with the shit show that's coming your way. Whereas if you've given yourself the parameters of, I'm going to get these 5 things done today and that's it, and you end up getting those things done, you're going to close off tomorrow in a very positive, accomplished headspace, compared to what could have been, I've now got 25 things to do and I feel like a fucking failure. I've done nothing yet again. Let me just roll another joint and let me just numb myself so that I can go to bed. There's 2 very different options. Both of them can include this. It's just one is geared towards a more proactive setup by making yourself aware of what's to come, so you're not just getting smashed over the face with it left, right, and center the next day. The other one is using this to numb yourself and avoid and escape the shit you've got to do, and ultimately the following day you've got more shit to do, and so you smoke more of this to avoid doing more shit, and you end up falling into this downward spiral, and before you know it, you're in a rut that you didn't see yourself getting in. Little things that you can do, as we've already covered. You could start working out. You don't have to work out like a maniac. You can lift weights once or twice a week, but start putting yourself into uncomfortable situations. Choose to put yourself into these situations and then sit there and feel it. Work and train your ability to handle and embrace the discomfort that comes with these things. Start doing some ice baths. Maybe you don't have an ice bath. That's cool. But most people have a shower. So what I would recommend, and this is what I've done for nearly 10 years now, but what I would recommend is after your hot shower in the morning, you step out of the shower, you take 20 to 30 big, deep, fast breaths. And on the 25th, 30th breath, whichever you decide is going to be your last breath, you might get a little bit lightheaded. Take in a deep breath, hold it, step under the cold water, and as soon as you feel that shock, let out a nice, smooth, slow exhale, and then start to go into a slow inhale, exhale, as you start to become okay with the fact that it's uncomfortable and that it's cold and that all your body is trying to do is get you to get the fuck out of there. The fight or flight response is alarming like a motherfucker, and all you want to do is get out of the cold water. But if you can attach yourself to that breath, you can start to pull yourself into a place that can handle stress. And if you can start to consciously put yourself into positions where you can embrace the stress, you can recognize these moments in life when that hits you, and you can then use that ability to handle the stress that life is throwing at you. You're then not going to be in a position to have to use this stuff to escape from it, because you can attack it head on, work your way through it, get your shit done, but then still light up and enjoy some fire. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but there is a little bit more to it that just comes from becoming aware and doing some self-work. In this case, working on your ability to manage and handle stressful situations. So anyway, if you're still with me after that ramble on about stress, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And if you have anything to add, please chuck it down below. I'm going to leave you guys to it, but if you could hit the like and subscribe button, that would be amazing. And I will see you next week. Have a good one. Take care.